All right, welcome to another practical lesson. So, this is the Cookbook practical lesson, and then if you go to the '07 practical, '07, '03 Cookbook, you will see the design information for this book cover design. So, we're going to design this book cover courtesy of Nathan of Book Cover Mall. We have the title, then we have the images from Pixabay, PNG, IMG.com, and then I'm going to use Bring Shoot Montserrat font for this, and this is just the details and is a Kindle cover design. So I'm going to open Photoshop, create new, and I'm going to make it pixels 27, let's make it 1563 by 2500 pixels. So the resolution, I'm going to leave it at 300, and then the color mode, CMYK color mode, and I'm going to tell you why I did this. I just wanted you to see the difference between the CMYK color mode and then the RGB color mode, and the difference in, and it's good for this one. So I'm going to make sure I select the default colors, which is the black and white. So I'm going to paint it with the foreground color, which is black. So Alt Delete or Option Delete on Mac to paint the background black, and this is the color that I want for this design. So I'm going to go back to the text file, and we are going to start with the images. So I have the images in the exercise folder, so you can use it or you can just download your own from those links. So now this is the images, and I'm going to use this texture, this sunburst, and then the burger pie, and then the beer, and this it's what we are going to use to design a cookbook. So I'm going to open up the images in Photoshop. So right click and open burger pie in Photoshop, and then I'm going to drag it and drop it in. So if you hold down the shift key, it's going to drop in the middle. So but of course I want it to maybe somewhere there, or maybe drag a little bit down, and right there is what I want. What I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to go to and open the beer also in Photoshop. So only two images, the beer and then the burger pie. I'm going to drag that, and this one is transparent, so we won't have much problem with this one. So I'm going to drag it somewhere there, and it's going to be at the top of that burger pie. So I'm going to select the selection tool, and I'm going to click on select subject, so that I want to select only the burger pie and remove the background. So I can zoom in, Ctrl++ or Command++ to make sure that I'm actually capturing only the burger pie, and right there it's okay. So I'm going to mark that, and then you can see we have only the burger pie and every other part is hidden. So I'm going to do that for this one because we have that section. So select subject and marks that also, and now I have only the beer shown. So I can move that to position. So if I copy that, I will select the type tool, and I'm going to paste that in there at the top. So at the top there is going to be, I can double click and then resize, select a color. I'm going to select white, or I'm going to sample a color from the burger pie, maybe the light part of the burger pie. Like I said, it's always important for you to select color from whatever image that you have on your design, on your cover. So let me change the font to Montserrat font. So Montserrat, and I'm going to choose maybe the medium or the regular font, and I'm going to resize that and then drag it into position like that. So the U capital letter, the E, the F, the B, and then the R, make that capital letters, and I'm going to, maybe somewhere there is good. So the title is still selected, so now the title, Ultimate Burger Recipe. So I'm going to put that maybe in 3 lines. The ultimate, then double click and make it bigger. Then the font, the Brookshoot font, that's what I'm going to use for this one. And of course, I'm going to resize it. Maybe 73 is okay. And I'm going to adjust maybe this one to make sure it's centered. And then I'm going to go back to this ultimate and maybe okay, let me type the other one, Ultimate Burger, and I'm going to increase the size of this one to blow it up to around maybe 160 or 170 or thereabouts. And then I'm going to put that into position. Make sure it's centered. When you see that vertical line, then sample color from, so I'm going to sample this yellow, bright yellow color from the cheese color, and it's okay. So now these 2 layers, I can drag them down, move them down to create more room for the title. So let's drag them down a little bit. Maybe the beer, drag that down. Of course, you can resize it if you want. Control T or Command T and resize, and then place it like so. So now the text tool again, and then I'll type in, maybe move this one up a little bit, and then to create more room for the last part of the title. So I'm going to put the title maybe somewhere, which is recipes, right? So I'm going to select the title and then type in recipes, and I'm going to make it small, then make sure the color is white this time around, and of course reduce the size until, and then maybe change the font also. I want the font to be different, so I will choose maybe the Montserrat font, the regular, or maybe light, and reduce it further. So maybe around 31, 32 we do, maybe 30, and then maybe put it there right above the beer bottle, the beer, and I can change it to maybe bold or semi-bold. I think it looks okay like this. So now I have the title done, I have the images done, so I need to add the other part of the, so let's make it light, I think. So I think it's okay like that. So I can maybe bold here, it's better. So we can choose the light one and then bold. It's going to be much better than if we pick the bold part of the font. So now this other part, Juice Delicious, we are going to copy that, and we are going to do something exciting. So we are going to maybe add it to maybe add it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use the pen tool to create something like a shape that is going to go along with the shape of the burger. So we're trying to make curve the text to take the shape of the burger. You understand? So the tool to use for that is definitely the pen tool. So we're going to create a new layer, and on that layer we are going to select the pen tool. Make sure the part is selected, and now we will try and trace something like that. So we'll click here, maybe somewhere here, and then we will click somewhere here to make sure that it's equal this, and then you drag out. Just make sure you drag it out gently until it takes that shape. You understand? So now we can press Alt on the last point, and then until we join back to the first point, and now that is joined. So we need to put a text in between, in the middle of that, and what we do is we select the text tool and we click right on top of the line. So when we do that, make sure that particular layer is selected, and once you type in anything, so make sure it touches the line, then you see it's going to take the shape of the inside. If you do it on the outside, it's going to take the shape of the outside. So I'm going to type in Juicilicious, and then you can see it's going to take the shape of that line on the inside, and we can now adjust the size of that. And this is what you can do with the pen tool. You can take the shape and then you can drag it to whatever position that you want, as long as that layer is selected. So now I think I like it this way, so I can double click and maybe change the font to the Bring Shoot font, and then the size, I'm going to increase the size, and you can also increase the maybe the text, maybe 38 will be fine. So let's make it 38, and then or 39 is okay. So you can see this is what we can do with the pen tool. You can actually use it to make a text take a shape. But another thing we can do is, let's turn this off. We can use the text tool itself to create something like that. And what we can do is, let me turn this particular layer off and then select the text tool, and then we can create a new layer and type in whatever text that we want to type, Juicilicious. So instead of using the pen tool, you can see in the option bar, you see this curve warp text. You can actually, there are so many options there that you can use to create something like a curve or like a shape. You understand? But it has, and you can control the shape of the arc and whatever you can do. So this is another option if you want to create something like a warp text. There are so many options there. We have this, the flag shape, we have the wavy shape, then we have the fish arc shape, and you can see there are so many options. So this is another thing that I can do. But sometimes I like to use the pen tool, because the pen tool, I can actually take the direction that I actually want. But it doesn't matter which one you use. You can use the warp option, or you can use, and then you can Control T to actually direct the shape. So Control T, and then you can move. You can do this and rotate until you get the perfect shape. But the pen tool, you can actually take the part that you want. So that's why sometimes I prefer to use the pen tool. But this option is also available if you want to use this option. So, and then you can see it's represented by that T, and then you can control the bend So that's one thing that you can do. You can control the bend, the horizontal distortion, the vertical distortion. So this is another option if you don't want to use the pen tool, and then you can click on OK, and then you can see it looks good actually. So you can use either of the two. You can use the warp text, or you can use the pen tool to create the part that you want, and then you can just type along that part. So now let me turn off this one, and then let me stick to the first one that I did. And now I will add the author details, the author name at the bottom. So select the type tool again, and now the author name is Ronnie McDonald. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it there. I'm going to change the font and the size, so you can double click and change the font to Montserrat font. Let's take medium, or medium is fine. Montserrat medium. Or regular, let's make it regular, and then we can reduce the size of the fonts, and now we can maybe bold, make it bold, and then select the move tool and then drag it into position. Make sure it's centered. When you see the vertical line, it's kind of centered, but we can also do that later on. We can align everything after our final design. So now maybe select the burger, the ultimate, and then the leaving only the recipe and the juicylicious. So control click to select that layer, control click to select the burger, the ultimate, and then of course the subtitle, and then we can click on this one, and then those texts will be centered. So you can see they are now centered. So we are done with the title, the subtitle, and the author details. So what we can do next is, on top of the background layer, we can add, so above that layer I'm going to add a texture. So I'm going to go to my system and find a very good texture to use. So that's why sometimes it's important for you to have lots and lots of texture in your folder on your system, so you can use it anytime you want to do a design like this. So I'll go into my resource folder on my system, and I'm going to find where I have my textures. You can see I have lots and lots and lots of textures, and I'm going to find the one that I'm going to use. So inside this folder, I already have one selected already. So I'm going to open that in Photoshop. So, and I'm going to drag it right on top of the background layer. So hold down the Shift key and drop, and then Control T or Command T, and you can. So we have to adjust it and then check. So what we can do is we can maybe reduce the opacity of the texture of that particular layer. We can reduce it to make sure that the image, or we can leave it at 100%. So what I'm going to do, instead of reducing the opacity, let's bring that back up to 100%. We can actually add maybe a glow under that particular layer, and then you can go to your, let me find a glow in my resource folder, and then I'm going to put that, or you can use your brush, you understand? So we can use that to brighten it up. So you can, I think I have some glows on my system, so I can use any of this and then upload that. So like I said, you can use your brush, so you can always go to your brush and then the general brush, and then find like a soft brush, and let's use the panel, the brush panel, and we can choose this round brush, the soft brush, and then we can just brush. We can select maybe a bright color and then just paint under that layer. So this is something that we can do, but in this case I'm just going to import a glow that I have. So any of this glow, right click, and then I'm going to open in Photoshop. So and then okay, this is the wrong one. So instead I'm going to go to File, Open, then find it and open it up in Photoshop, and then I'm going to drag it and put it below the texture layer. I want it below the texture because I want it to brighten up the texture, so it has to be below the texture. So drag it below the texture, and now what we can do is we can reduce the opacity of that texture, but it's not going to look good. So let me put it back to 100%. Instead I'm going to choose the blending mode, change the blending mode of that particular texture layer, and you can see multiply. Maybe multiply will look good. So you can play around with the color modes, and then you can see that particular texture is actually glowing because we have that glow right under. So let me put some pattern on the texture layer. So I'm going to import the sunburst, open it up in Photoshop, and then I'm going to drag it hold down the shift key and drop to make sure it's centered, and you can see it's actually below the texture. I'm going to drag it above the texture because I want it to be right above the texture while the glow is under the texture. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to convert the texture to a smart object so that we can easily just change those layers anytime we want. So any layer that you feel that you want to change later, easily we can just convert it to smart object, and then we can change the color later on, anything we want to do. So we can just double click on that, and then we can change it anytime we want. So I'm going to reduce opacity of the sunburst to maybe around 22 or 16 or thereabouts. I think it looks good so that it does not overshadow the texture and then the glow. So let me find another color mode, vivid, multiply, darken. No, multiply, I think it's still the best choice. So let me reduce the opacity. So I think it looks so much. So you can always play around just to see whether you get the best result. So 7, 16, 27. You know what? I think I'm going to leave it at 100%. I'm going to leave it at 100%. And this layer, convert it to smart object, and then you can easily change that later if you wanted. And of course you can always change the color right here and then save, and then it will reflect on the cover. So now we can go back here and then do necessary adjustment at 100% and with a multiply color mode. I think it looks good. So now I can make necessary adjustments, maybe this one, drag it down a little bit and then place it below the burger layer so it looks like it's actually behind the burger, and then of course we can group that together and then Uselicious, then drag them up so to create more room at the bottom for the auto details. So I think it looks good like that, and then we can drag this up and make sure it's centered, and now it looks so much better. So now we are almost done with this design. So once you've done that, we can add maybe a shadow below the bear and also below the burger. So I'll go back and click on that particular layer. So we click inside the mask. That's where we are going to add, or we can create a new layer. So we can create a new layer and then select the brush tool. Let's zoom in so that we'll be able to see it clearly. So select a new layer, make sure it's above, it's actually below the burger layer. So I'm going to select round, soft round brush, and I'm going to reduce the size of that brush and make sure the color is black, the foreground color is black, and I'm going to paint on that empty layer which is below the burger layer. So just paint, it's actually below it, so it's not going to damage. And the reason why I'm painting on the empty layer, so the opacity, make it 100, and in some places you can reduce it. The reason why I'm painting on an empty layer is to make sure that I don't damage the burger layer. So this part I'm going to reduce it to maybe 63, and I'm going to paint on the edge. So maybe later on, if you want to remove that layer, you can just delete that particular layer without actually damaging the burger image. So now I'm going to do the same for the beer. So I'm just going to maybe create another, well, I can paint on the same layer actually, or I can create a new layer, or paint on the same layer and drag everything below both of them so that it actually, I think it looks okay. And then I can reduce the opacity if I wanted. So maybe reduce it so that it's not too, maybe at 79% looks okay. And then if I turn this on, you can see it actually looks good. And then if I zoom back out, we can see what it looks like. So now the image, the text, everything is done. So now that I'm done, I'll go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save as Cookbook cover. I'm going to save the PSD and of course the JPEG format. So let's look at the JPEG format, double click, and this is what it looks like. And you can see the color looks kind of dull, and that's because I'm actually working with the CMYK mode. The color is not as wide as RGB color mode. So, and I'm going to address that later. So, but first I need to group the text together. So the title, make sure you always do this, the title and then the other text, then the images and then the shadow, everything together. So I can label this shadow and then label this texture, then this is glow or burst. So let me label it as glow, and then I can select all those layers, put them together as a group and name it background image, something like that. And of course I can unlock that and then drag that into the same group and put the background below at the bottom, drag that, and then so we only have the background image and then the text. So now that we are done, so let's compare the RGB color mode and then CMYK. So I'll go to image mode and then you can see it's CMYK. So I'm going to select the RGB color mode, and then you will see the difference between the RGB color mode and then the CMYK color mode. So we'll go to color mode and then we'll select RGB. Then it will tell you whether I want to match, say don't match, don't rasterize, because we don't want to mess with all our layers. We only want to change the color mode. And you can see the color mode, you can see the RGB color mode. It looks kind of better, and that's because the RGB color mode has a wider range of colors. Then you can see the CMYK looks kind of dry, and then it's not that cool. So you can go back and forth, Control Z and Shift Control Z to go back and forth to compare both the RGB and then the CMYK, and then you can see the RGB actually looks cooler, and that's because the RGB color mode, it has wider range of colors, so it's look brighter than the CMYK color mode. So now we are done. Another thing we can do finally to this one is to add maybe a filter, and then I always like to add like the eye pass filter, and we can do that by actually flattening the image. So we can select both layers by typing Alt Control Alt E on Windows or Shift Command Option E on Mac, and then it will create a flattened version of all the layers. You can see it will create it right above those layers without damaging all the layers. You understand? So now that we have that layer, now we can go to filter. So I'll go to filter, then I'll go to other, and then eye pass. When you do this, it actually makes your image actually make it, especially if you are working with images that are not so good, it will make it kind of sharper. You understand? So I'm going to choose radius. Maybe this might be too low. At a point where the text start getting brighter, maybe around 8.2 or something like that. Then don't go too high and don't go too low. So maybe somewhere around this point, or maybe around 7 or 8, and then you click on OK. Maybe this position is good, 9.0, and then you click on OK. Now we need to change the color mode. So I always use overlay and sometimes soft light. That's where I get the best result. And actually for this design, this filter is not necessary, and that's because we are already using images that are very sharp, so it's not necessary. But in case you are working with images that are not so bright, you can do this, add an eye pass filter, change the color mode to overlay, and then reduce the opacity to maybe around 70-75%, and then you can see the difference. It looks kind of sharper, but this is mainly text, so it's not I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of different. You can see with the eye pass filter, it looks kind of sharper, but the images we used is actually very good, so we don't need to do this. But in case you are working with blurry images, you can always use something like eye pass filter, and then you are done. So you can now save. You can now save this, and we are done. So this is how to design a cookbook, and then there are so many designs that you can do for an ebook, like a cookbook. So I'm going to save over that, and we are done. So let's see what it looks like. Looks good. Looks good. So this is a good design, and you can follow and design something similar. So we are done with this design. So in the next video, we are going to design a fitness and health book cover. So I hope you like this video. On to the next video.